it will be very good if William Ruto and his team agree to join and support BBI, because then we'll have been having a chance to sanitize the state.
Right. Fred.
The people of Kenya have made a consensus. They've made a consensus that in their general argument, they want money at the village level. The people of Kenya have said it has been long overdue. The achievement or the implementation, the question implementation of the 2/3 gender principle has been a nightmare. Remember, Shulei tried it, Duale tried it. It has been tried over 4 times, including the time that Neto was in parliament, you know. The people of Kenya have said that we must strengthen our institutions. We must now expedite the corruption cases. That is the biggest burden that is killing this economy. We must now ensure that we have a socio-economic rights, Article 43, that is part of the criteria of dividing revenue. That is part of the report the president shall give annually to the bicameral house, you know. So in all honesty, it is important to underscore the fact that all these are done to ensure that the Constitution of Kenya that we have is implemented. Okay. And if you read the objects of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 Amendment, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, it says that number 1 is to effect the implementation. Today, we have got 3 constitutional principles that we have never effected.
Right.
Why? Because we cannot do that without amending. Number 1, the 2/3 gender principle in Article 81 that requires that not more than 2/3 of the same gender shall occupy elective position. It has never been done. Yep. Number 2, the population quota in Article 89 that requires that in reviewing the boundaries, each constituency shall have a population quota that is not 40% more or 30% depending on urban or sparsely populated area. The last one is the fair representation on equality of vote. Okay. The population keeps on going. Recently, we did a census. We used to say we are 45 million. Today, we are talking about over 47 million Kenyans. Where are these guys going to be? How is the representation? We have a constituency of 500 people represented by 1 member of parliament, while you have another that is 42,000 represented by 1 member of parliament, each of these members of parliament receiving 100,000 in form of CDF. Yeah. Where is the fairness? But that is not the most important thing. The most important thing is how do we ensure that in terms of lowering the economic burden that taxpayers of Kenya are carrying, how do we ensure that the money that has been getting lost at the county headquarters now is going to the village in the ward level in form of a ward development fund? And by the way, as a matter of right, not that the governor shall now decide if this MCA doesn't support me, I'll not give. It is a constitutional right. And in that money, also, it is required that it shall ensure the achievement of the economic and social rights, water, social security, healthcare, and education. Those are rights that are inalienable. You cannot take away from the people of Kenya. We have failed as a country. This Constitution of Kenya 20 that we have today is very progressive. But you guess what? Constitution is a living document. Yeah. You must breathe life into it. Okay. And therefore, in my personal view, the amendments that have been identified, are now trying to breathe life into this. But I've seen, as I finish, I've seen people out there who do not tell their supporters to read the bill, but they're telling them to reject the bill. Okay. Remember, you cannot reject what you don't know its content. Read it, and then we have also another final decision, the final public participation that shall happen at the referendum. Okay. Give Kenyans a chance. For now, the
reason why you were smiling when I said whether we're going to go for a referendum, it was almost certain that here we are, Ben. Yes. Allow Ben to come in briefly, and then...
I think there are 2 sides of this divide, and I'm happy I sit in the middle of it because I can hear them very well. Okay. And the beauty of these 2 sides of the divide is that there are people who believe, like Mheshimiwa here, that BBI will not sort the immediate problems of Kenyans at the grassroots level. And there are those people who believe that BBI is going to sort out the problems of the Kenyans.
Constitution amendment, not only BBI. Yes. Remember, there are also others. Yes. Constitution amendment. And I can tell you as a lawyer that some of that stuff does not belong to the Constitution. It should not even be there. The Constitution should be a very broad document.
And some of the things that we are trying to enshrine in that constitution should actually belong to acts of parliament and other smaller places, including county government bylaws, by the way. But having said that, let us look at it from another perspective, like people who are slightly detached from the document. And one of them is this: Kenya is collecting about 1.5 trillion every other year. And after collecting that 1.5 trillion, we are using about $1 trillion to pay the debts that we owe to the people we have been borrowing from, because we have a very good appetite for borrowing. And we are saying with BBI, which is not a bad thing, which is passionate about, that we are going to allocate 35% to the counties. Allocating 35% to the counties starts with, when they say the ward level, that MCA. And when you talk about an MCA, look at the caliber of the MCAs we have in Nairobi. Okay. That's the starting point. And that's the person we want to allocate that 5% to. And look at how they... Wait, let's go slowly. Let's go slowly. You had your chance. You had your
Linda,
chance. I have mine.
We debate with content.
Okay.
Because, you know, the bill... We're talking about the bill. We're not talking about the report. And when you talk about the bill, Linda, in the bill, if you read the provisions of Ward Development Fund, and I'm glad I'm speaking to a fellow learned friend who I expect to understand these issues, it has said that there shall be an act of parliament that will provide for the management and even the way of public participation and even the way that money shall be disbursed. Yes. That money is not going for the ward rep. It is not. Right. And therefore, it is important to speak from the point of knowledge. Number three, in the issues of what can be done in parliament as an act of parliament or what can be done as a policy, go back to the report. The implementation matrices, policy, legislation, and
he's forgetting one thing.
So when we are going for the amendment, it is important to understand that. Let's talk about the bill. Let's not talk about the
okay. Let's right.
Let me just explain one thing. You know, it is good to have a normal and a sober discussion. You know, when Fred was speaking, I was wondering what he was talking to. You know, I have appreciated as a leader of the United Green Movement Party, we have read the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. We read the BBI 1, we read BBI 2, we read BBI 3. You know, he takes a trajectory and starts talking about socio-economic rights under Article 43 of the Constitution. The realization of socio-economic rights under the Constitution, the programmatic steps, you know, to realize socio-economic rights. You cannot start having a conversation. Nothing in BBI whatsoever shows us how to realize socio-economic rights. You know, what is Kenya's problems? Kenya's problems are institutional problems. Kenya's problems are institutional problems, and Kenya is suffering from state capture. BBI is an exact extrapolation of what state capture is. You know, right now, we have a state that is captured, the executive is captured, we have a parliament that is captured. The only sober institution in this country that has been left has been the judiciary. And you know, you've seen how Justice Maraga has done a very good job in terms of trying to keep a check and a balance. You see, I'm surprised that as a lawyer is arguing in the way that he's trying to argue. State power is supposed to be checked. And the best way to check state power is that having an executive that checks the judiciary, that checks the legislature. The moment you want to emasculate the legislature in the way that the BBI bill is pretending to do, the moment you want to try and emasculate the judiciary the way BBI is trying to do, that is where the problem is, and that is where the Kenyan problem is. So you cannot start telling us that some ward fund is going to be given. If this particular Uhuru Kenyatta's government has not given 15% that the Constitution Article 203 now anticipates, how sure are we that we're going to get 35%? That is number one. But number two, you've just been having a conversation about the COVID cases, like the PPE and the theft of funds. What stops them from prosecuting the theft of COVID funds now, absent a constitutional amendment? So you see, the reason why we do not realize the socio-economic rights under Article 43 is because of inept government. It's because of corruption. And those things ought not to be sorted out by constitutional amendment. Those are principles of constitutionalism. The president, the judiciary, the legislature are supposed to give effect to the principle of the Constitution, and you do not need an amendment to sort out Kenya's problems.
And this is what I was coming to before I was interrupted. What I was trying to explain to him is that we have a CDF Act, NG-CDF Act, that has not stopped our MPs from looting public money, and there's nothing that is happening to them. To tell me that there will be a ward development act that will help the MCAs on how they are going to govern this money is a lie. because we know Kenyans have a way of going around issues. In fact, what they'll do, they'll not even touch that money. They'll give you a contract to paint, and then they'll tell you where to buy the paint from.
Okay.
They'll give you a contract to build
tell you this is the company.
and they'll tell you where to buy the cement from. What I'm trying to say is that we need to think of a different way of making sure that money gets down to the mwananchi and money does develop the places without necessarily having to think of it that it has to come through an elected politician, because every time that happens, they have always gone around their way. They have always stolen this money, because this is experience, and people who don't learn from experience make really huge mistakes. And they have always not been prosecuted, and none of them has gone to jail for it. Having said that, there's this other thing that we need to understand, and this is the pain that Kenyans have with BBI. Much as I like the bulk of the content of what this BBI is about, and much as I support the spirit of BBI, there's this challenge that Kenyans have. Today, you can die of a snake bite in the village, but a BBI signature form will get to you immediately. What I'm trying to say is this. Look at it this way. When the government said that they have allowed ethanol to be released that was locked in other places because they are going to make free sanitizers that will be given to every other Kenyan, it was hard to get those sanitizers to those people.
Yes.
But when we need a form for collection of BBI signatures, I can tell you, within less than what? They announced it on a Wednesday. The following day, the smallest village, the most remote village in that place had received a form where they can come and append their signatures for BBI. But it was not possible to get a mask to that village.
Right.
This is the pain that Kenyans have with the BBI process. It is not a bad process, but it's just trying to show government that, for example, I was looking at pictures of a road I used this morning. And you wonder how ballot papers did get there, but it's not possible to get one truck load of Moram to that road. This is the insensitivity of government.
An idea
that when something is about them,
when something
is there's no part of this country that is too remote. There's no part of this country that is too remote to get a form for BBI signature.
Right.
But there are parts of this country that are too remote to get a PPE to.
Fred is not in government. Why does it look like it's about the government? Is it an idea whose time had not come?
You know, Linda, Kenyans must be honest with themselves before they become honest with other people. We have seen challenges during general elections.
Right.
General election is an important issue. I mean, it's a way of exercising your rights, you know. And we have seen ballot papers taking longer to reach some areas. Have we talked about it? Is it an issue that we acknowledge is a problem? Yes, we do.
The areas where we are not popular,
it is
and we don't want them
important to understand that let us not mix issues. Today we are talking about the Constitution of Kenya, the supreme law of the land, and he understands that. And this is what we are saying. This amendment, you know, people have got a problem with BBI. So many people have a problem with BBI. That's okay.
And you know, interestingly, allow me to say this, Fred, and I'd love for you to equally touch on that. It might not be necessary, but this is the reality.
Yes.
If you speak to a majority of people on ground today, they will tell you, "Ata afadhali ile punguza mizigo." Interestingly,
that is true, and I'll tell you why. And I'm the proponent of punguza mizigo on this table. We are saying, you see, talk about constitutional amendments. Don't tie it with the people that you hate. The people that did not treat you right when you expect them to treat you right. That's being personal. But when you look at the document, criticize the document on the merits and demerits, you know. So for me as a Kenyan who believes that my two young girls should grow up in a country that they have equitable opportunity in terms of economics, I should be very happy to champion a process that will deliver that. And that's why I'm saying, let us look at the processes. Constitutional amendments worldwide are negotiated processes. They are largely political. They are not even legal. They are largely political. The task force finished their job. The legal expert finished their job. It is now a political process, and they are negotiated. Today, the reason why William Ruto is thinking twice before he says yes or no, because he knows it's a political process and he stands to be a beneficiary, you know. So therefore, as a politician, I also should look at it as a way that how is it going to affect my people? How is it going to affect my children? Now, here's the deal. The constitutional amendment that we're talking about has proposed certain areas that, with all due respect to my two colleagues, are good for the people of Kenya. You see?
I would expect them to debate
which parts are good. Then we can have a debate on the good parts.
Unless Neto was not listening.
He started by pointing.
No. I mean,
he was not listening.
By the way, he's not
be that as it may.
Just wait, Fred.
The reason.
Fred, just give me a minute. There is no point of the bill that you've pointed that this particular point is good for the people of Kenya. Highlight an article that you think is good for the people of Kenya, and we'll debate about it, and we'll tell you why we think it is bad for the people of Kenya.
I want us to look at this document wholesomely.
Which we might not be able to.
Which we might not be able to.
Yeah,
but I've given Neto and Kinuthia a summary of what
he mentioned one part,
which is
representation.
So for me,
some people are underrepresented and some are overrepresented.
Okay.
Maybe Neto was not listening, but it's okay.
I mean, let me tell you, Fred, how I came to this.
The issue here is very simple.
No, Fred, just listen to me.
In terms of implementing the Constitution, there is a constitutional principle. The fact that we still have that in the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and it has not been amended and it remains a constitutional principle, we must abide.
What constitutional principle is that? What is the constitutional principle you're talking about?
Neto,
no,
you are in Parliament and I'm disappointed that you don't know about what is a constitutional principle. I've said we have got two-thirds gender principle.
Let's do it for the benefit of the viewer.
Okay,
yes.
Neto, we have the two-thirds gender principle. It's a requirement.
Yes.
We have got the population quota in delimitation of electoral units. It is a requirement.
Fred,
listen, be a good listener.
No,
so
Fred,
the other thing,
Fred, you cannot just ban the words. But you cannot ban the words. You cannot come.
Let's allow him to counter and react.
No. You cannot come and ban the words as constitutional principle. You know, how is BBI responding to the two-third gender principle? And you know, there is I wanted him to pinpoint issues so that you can then discuss them. Because the two-third gender principle, how do you achieve the two-third gender principle? I mean, constitutionalism has ways of doing that. First of all, one, you can either achieve the two-third gender principle through proportional representation. That is one. The second thing is you can achieve the two-third gender principle through a mixed member proportionate. That is the second one. How is BBI helping us achieve Article 27(8) of the Constitution that talks about the two-third gender principle in its proposals? I'll show you. There is a fallacy that there is an equitable positioning of the Senate as 50-50, that 47 senators and 47 male senators, 47 female senators. What BBI does, which is a very dangerous principle of the two-third gender principle, and I was hoping that it starts that conversation because that is a principle that I've written on several times, and you appreciate that, for example, the two-third gender principle on how to attain that principle was drafted by none other than myself. Okay. So when you start talking about those principles, I was waiting for you to bring it on. Listen, what BBI proposes right now in terms of extending the size of parliament without definitive ways. You know, right now, BBI says it's going to be 360 members of parliament, and then there'll be a top-up to such an extent that, that the two-third gender principle is attained. Now, I'll explain to you. Giving women tokenism in the manner of making sure that we do not want numbers, we want quality in those numbers. Right. And one of the things that BBI is failing to do is giving us quality in the numbers. That is number one. Number two, women leaders will tell you, and the best way to do affirmative action on women is that give the women a chance to be elected so that they represent the people. When you have people in political parties going to dole leadership roles to women. Look at what has happened to the MCAs. The MCAs were being given tokens in terms of top-up numbers. Women have said they want to be treated with dignity. We want to give our women a chance to participate equally in politics, Linda, and by competing for office. And that particular principle is not...
Do not be left out of this conversation.
I am very disappointed because Neto,
there's something they are not
Neto doesn't know what he's speaking about. So let me explain to Neto.
But honestly, what
every affirmative action or policies that direct to that extent have got sunset periods. Even the current Constitution of Kenya 2010, it had a sunset period. Look, the proposal in the amendment...
What was the sunset period?
The proposal in the amendment is such that if you are going to achieve...
Fred, I told you something.
Neto, Linda, listen. So if you are going to achieve this,
gentlemen,
number one, Linda, the women of this country are suitable, capable, and competent. And if you look at the proposal, the winners or the nominees shall be participants of an election. So if they go and participate in an election, we are trying to put the cart before the horse. We are assuming that Kenyans will elect only men. That is a fallacy.
But wait a minute. Let's go back to this.
Let me just finish. Okay. So in this context, The proposal that Neto is bragging about that he wrote, his explanation doesn't show that he wrote it because it is wrong.
Okay.
In the proportional representation, as we have today, the nominees are beneficiaries from
Fred, listen,
guys,
from a nomination after the seats. In the current one is after the results have been declared and on number of votes.
Okay.
And the explanation is very simple. You go for an election, you lose. You go for an MCA election, you lose. But the participant there, if you are going to be nominated, then they start from the participants and the number of votes garnered. Okay? So it is not just somebody who was picked, a slave queen picked from another party and brought to the table. That is not it. These are participants who participated. Lastly, NATO must also understand that we should not be bitter with ourselves.
Right.
We should be people who understand that this country needs all of us. And ideas are competing. I didn't see NATO proposing the alternative. He comes to speak on a national TV without a proposal.
Okay.
So it worries me as someone who has been a member of parliament. It's really worrying.
There's something I have always said.
Okay.
And we never want to address it. Most of the times, people get themselves into a bad situation and then try to look for ways out of the bad situation, knowing that they've gotten themselves there. Whoever, and I sat at Bombers 1, 2, and 3 as the only observer on behalf of the youth. I was very young, Bombers 1, 2, and 3. And one of the things we have always said is that whoever came up with that
the two-third
gender principle,
it is almost unrealistic for us to realize you don't want to say that.
Created a dilemma for us.
Okay.
Because it's like coming to a stadium where people are coming to watch football and say a third of the people who are entering this stadium must be from at least one gender. Now that creates a huge problem because what we have done, even the proposals in the beautiful BPI that I love to support and like and smile about, is we have said that parties will be forced that at least a third of the names they give for nominees will be from one gender and the other 2/3 at least. So they're trying to make sure that if you give us, say, 100 names, about 30 of those names are women.
And there shall be sanction to that.
And now this is the problem. Okay. This is the problem. You go into a fair nomination process.
Right.
This is nomination. The parties will try to make it as fair as possible. And then after that nomination, Kenyans refuse to give you, for example, women. You don't hit their third. So what do you do as a party? Because you want to submit to IEBC a list that is compliant, you'll be forced to disappoint some men and actually snatch them away from them, the nomination that they want so hard, and give to women to give a room for this a third. What we should have done as a country is to say that making it a constitutional principle that not more than a third of the people elected must be from one gender, and in all other states. That was a dilemma, and it is one that we need to face,
Linda,
and we need to wake up.
Gentlemen, to give me 1 minute uninterrupted, then I will help them understand. I started by introducing myself as the co-party leader of the United Green Movement Party, and I said that in my political party, I have a colleague who is a female party leader. In my party, I have a colleague who is both male and female.
Right.
What does that mean? That as United Green Movement Party, we have appreciated a constitutional principle that ensures that we have 50-50 representation, that we have 50 men and 50 women in all the posts. That is possible in any constitutional making, and that's why I've chosen to interrupt you. It is possible in our constitutional document, set out, law is a science, there's a formula to doing it. It is possible, a country like Sweden has 50-50 in the representation. It is possible to design a constitution in a manner that it gives you quality 50 men, quality 50 women. It is possible to do that. And you see, that's what I'm saying, that my problem with BBI is that BBI does not seek to respond to that particular affirmative action principle of Article 27.8. What it ought to have done is it ought to have shown us how do we give women seats that they can compete for, that helps respond to the 2/3. And I told you, and I drafted a bill that Fred looks like did not even have a chance to read. What do? You ought to create the number of constituencies. What Uganda has done, for example. Uganda has something called a mixed member proportionate. That you have specific seats for the youth, you have specific seats for the women, you have specific seats for all these kind of people. So that it is possible within a constitution to design that. Now, to leave it in an omnibus manner like BBI is supposed to do, that look, you're leaving it to the vagaries of nature. And Fred says very well that we are assuming that all people who elected will be men. No, we're not assuming. History has shown us that of these elections in 1963, women are disadvantaged. Women do not have the power. So what do we need to do with an affirmative action principle? You need to create for them the safeguards to ensure that they're elected. And you know, he said something that I did not agree with. This particular constitution did not have a sunset clause on the two-third gender. Did not have. BBI is trying to create one. But what BBI should have done is created the seats, special seats for women, created a safeguard for them, and a sunset clause. That way, it is possible to attain the two-third gender role. It is not an aspirational constitutional principle, it is achievable.
Goodwill is
Linda,
one thing that we've lacked
just
in
a
this
quick one.
Yes.
I understand what Neto is saying. Now, you know, when you are amending the constitution, it is a negotiated process. You cannot amend the constitution in a TV set.
Yeah.
You can only amend it to where it should be amended. And you can go to the people. Now, I admire also NATO's party when they say 50-50. As a matter of fact, if you remember Punguza Mzigo 1, we proposed 50-50 percentage both in the National Assembly and in the Senate. Yeah. And you know what people told us when we went all the way to the county assembly? Having been the first party to go all the way, they told us, you cannot force us who we are going to elect. This is a political right. You cannot. And it's a fact. And therefore, creating special seats for special groups, for youth, women, it is something that is not achievable.
How will
a polite way of saying what it is that...
How will your party submit to IEBC? A third. Just tell us that.
So for me, I think people have been worried about the cost. Because when they see a principle that is attempting to achieve the two-thirds, they start worrying about the cost, because that principle will be more. I mean, the numbers will be more.
Right.
The idea is not about money. Elections or representation is not a job. You're not going there to get a job. It's not a job. It is a service. And therefore, what we need to do, we need to cap the salaries of the representatives. And if you look at amendment to Article 230, Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and I would want the gentleman to go and check it. It also talks about harmonizing. So for me, I think Parliament must now go down and look at that article, effect a statute that will ensure that the same member of Parliament, because we want to achieve two-thirds, in the unlikely event that Kenyans don't elect men and then the best women in an election participation are nominated, then therefore the salaries and emoluments that they'll be earning must be low, so that we don't go on the wage bill.
He's not listening to himself. He's not listening to himself. Linda, he's saying that Parliament,
questions, I think
that Parliament will go and create a statute on salaries and remunerations to review their own salaries downwards.
They cannot.
These are people who've just accepted 250,000 shillings in house allowances just there, and they backdated it. Yeah. These are the people we know. They sat in that house, and you're telling them to sit down and review their salary downwards.
No. I don't agree. Because the Constitution in Article 3 has not been amended.
Linda, that's why I chose not to listen to those platitudes that Fred was presenting as well. I mean, allow me to say why, as United Green Women Party, we are saying Kenyans should reject BBI. I will not engage in the two-third gender debate because I am seeing we don't understand what you're talking about. So it is possible for
There's evidently no goodwill. As a woman, I'll say that.
No. There's goodwill, there's principle, there's opportunity.
So when men hate women, they cannot appreciate
what I'd like us to agree on is, I am asking myself, on behalf of the people of UGM that we represent, that Kenyans should reject BBI because no one asked them to put in place a judiciary ombudsman. Like I said before, what has been working in this country is the judiciary. I do not understand why they want, or who told them that the ombudsman, the judges need to be investigated in terms of the ruling.
But Neto, the ombudsman is there even now. The ombudsman is even now, Neto. Really?
Fred, can I just finish?
No. You can't lie to Kenyans. I mean, I believe your party is not a party of lies, because the office of the ombudsman, as it is there, and the amendments were done to
our judges need to be oversighted. These people have become something else.
Neto.
Can I say something, Fred? How did you oversight? I am wondering if you gentlemen have appreciated the principles of constitutionalism and constitutional law, because the checks and balances that the Constitution creates, the judges are supposed to be oversighted. How do you oversight judges? Judges are oversighted by putting a tribunal in place to investigate.
Does the ombudsman oversight the judges?
But you've not. That means you've not read.
You have read it. Does it?
Fred, that means you've not read the provision, because it says that the ombudsman will initiate, and it'll also say in the JSC. So we are asking, what then happens to the process of initiating the removal of judges? That is number one. That is what.
Neto, you are a liar.
That is that's a
Allow me to.
That's a strong.
Do we have?
Yeah, it is. I mean, really,
that's a strong.
It is because I mean, Linda.
Let's be.
No.
That's a
sobering
strong
now, Fred.
Let's
That's a strong
refer us.
statement.
Let's refer us to the document.
That's a strong.
Yes.
I am telling you, I have read that.
Fair enough.
The document.
We should be having the document.
The document proposes that the ombudsman will initiate the investigation of
Linda,
the issues of
producer,
judges.
Give us
We should be having it
and
up.
then number two,
Let me just forward it to my producer.
And number two, the reasons why we also say we should oppose BBI is because they want to remove the powers of promoting and the police, for example, removing it from the National Police Service Commission, putting all those powers to the Inspector General of Police. And we're thinking that the reason why the National Police Service Commission was created in the first place was so that it safeguards the interests of the police. And so we're saying this autocratic nature, this clawback in what has been gained by the police, for example, what has been gained by the judiciary, I think those proposals should not be allowed.
On the Police Service Commission, there's something I need to say pretty quickly. And this has happened, and it's a good thing. It's a very, very, very interesting proposal.
Yeah.
What has happened, if you talk to people within the force, they'll tell you this. There was a time when the police was disciplined. Because if a senior officer over you, like the OCPD, told you he's sending you from Settlers Police Station, for example, to Kayole Police Station, you didn't ask questions. But now a time has come when a junior police constable is connected to a very senior police constable, more senior than his own OCPD. And when he has a case of indiscipline, because the OCPD cannot fire him and recommends that this person be transferred to another station, he'll insubordinate him by telling him, I am better connected than you are. And a phone call will come from a higher office than his office, and this officer will continue to remain there and continue to be in discipline. And this is happening all over. That's why you're finding some police stations, the police do whatever they want. And the OCS has no control over them, the OCPD has no control over them. But if this goes to the Inspector General of Police, if he has powers, then what happens is that the police becomes like the military, where if orders are given by a senior officer, they are followed. Discipline is instilled, and service to the people becomes better.
I respect
that. Was the spirit.
Allow me to read for Neto.
And the ombudsman.
Yes, allow me to read for Neto.
Please read.
In Article 172, this is the the amendment.
Yeah.
There is established the office of the Judiciary Ombudsman.
Yes.
Then the President shall nominate and with the approval of the Senate appoint the Judiciary Ombudsman. Remember in the BBI 1, there was no approval by Senate. So here is somebody going to approve. But that's not the issue. I want to take Neto to the functions. Clause 4. The Judiciary Ombudsman shall prepare regular reports to the Judiciary Service Commission and annual report to Parliament on any complaint under Clause 3. Clause 3 says the Judiciary Ombudsman shall receive and conduct inquiries into complaints against judges. Complaints against judges. Yeah. Registrar, magistrates, and other judicial officers sensitize and promote engagement with the public on the role and performance of the judiciary. Can you see I gave an example? Just hold on. Can you give an example?
Please read the entire. Please read the entirety.
Because we don't have time. But
no, Fred, you cannot
for
read.
For clarity purposes, let's just do it.
Read its entirety.
I have it, Fred. Remember, I sent it to me also.
Read its entirety. How the Ombudsman interfaces with the Judicial Service Commission. Just read that. Then after that, you can have the debate.
Okay.
So that you don't read it.
The judiciary shall not investigate any matter pending before any court. That's Neto's fear. Or tribunal, or reopen court, or tribunal case, or review a judge's decision. So there's no way they're interfering in that. Number 2, the judicial ombudsman shall hold office for a single term. Parliament shall allocate. I'm just trying to check where the JSC is because it's a separate. On the JSC, the judiciary ombudsman is an ex-official member. So Neto also should know that.
But
my point is,
producer, I sent you the document.
My point is, Linda, my point is, your producer will do that for Neto. My point is, Neto is trying to lie to Kenyans that this judiciary ombudsman is an active. Okay, I withdraw that. I withdraw that.
You're calling me a liar twice on national TV.
I withdraw that.
And listen.
I withdraw that.
I'd like you to read. I'd like you to read.
Next time, don't call him a liar. Say
the thing is,
go with the truth.
Okay, Neto, you're economical with the truth.
But you're not reading the entire truth.
Because I don't have that time. The producer will do that. The issue is, Linda, we must understand how to strengthen institutions. And I've seen activists out there trying to point a finger. And remember, this is an issue that was in Bomas. And people said, wait a minute. This judiciary ombudsman, from his appointment, all the way to how it's going to work, it is likely to interfere with the independence of the judiciary. That issue was sorted. It was sorted.
Yes.
Today, because the activists must be relevant and because they must make money, they have come back with another issue. They're saying, no. This judiciary ombudsman, we are still not agreeing with. And Kenyans have complained. There are cases in court today that have taken 20 years.
Yes.
There's a judge who just sits and does nothing. There are cases that people have reported that my issue, it is an appeal, all these things. They have not. Who is the link between the public and the judiciary?
The budgets have been cut today.
And
you know, Linda, the question that I asked my two colleagues sitting here is if they understand the principles of checks and balances of the various institutions. If at all you understand that fundamental constitution, if you understand that fundamental constitutional issue, then you will appreciate that the judiciary oversights itself enters, and there's a how it interfaces with the legislature. And those parts
of the judiciary.
And that's
exactly. Exactly. The judiciary ought to be oversighted by the legislature and the executive.
Ought to be.
But
is it happening?
Currently, there's a JSC. Why do you have a JSC?
Listen, gentlemen.
Let's just say this. Currently,
and listen, gentlemen,
the only arm of government in Kenya that is not being oversighted, truth be told, is the judiciary.
That's it.
And these are the only people who want to claim independence, and they want to do. In fact, they want to oversight the national government.
They want to claim
They want to oversight the executive. They want to oversight parliament. But they don't want a situation where their conduct.
Okay, let me ask you. Let me ask you, gentlemen. In fact, that's not a good constitutional conversation to have.
Yes.
How ought the judiciary be oversighted?
This is what I was coming to.
That is a question that we need to ask ourselves.
I'm explaining.
Why?
And you see,
let me explain to him.
Just wait. Let me give you a proposal.
Yes.
How ought the judiciary be oversighted? The oversighting of judiciary does not mean interfering with the independence. So now please proceed.
This is what we mean. For example, look at the Police Service Commission. We have the independent, we have the IPOA. So where the public can go to IPOA and complain you are complaining about something that a policeman did, because ordinarily you'd have gone to a police station to tell someone that the OCS did this to me, and you know where that will land.
Correct.
That's why we have IPOA. Now, to check the excesses of the executive, we have parliament. So that whatever ministers do, or whatever the cabinet does, parliament will come, and that's why we have parliamentary select committee to oversight what the executive is doing. Now, the judiciary is the only person where a judge will come and keep adjourning a case for 20 years because he's been given money and there's nobody asking a question.
And even
the judiciary ombudsman is an independent office that does not come and stop the judge from doing that, but will come and write a report and say, there's a judge called Kamau, and there was a simple case of somebody's land that was stolen from them. And this case, in our opinion, should have been dealt with within 6 months or 1 year. But Kamau has handled that case over a period of 7 years, and there's no good reason for that. So they make a report. Once they make that report, it goes to the public domain, and it's given to parliament. Now, and it's very clear, it goes to parliament. And then parliament debates and says, why did this case of Kamau take 7 years, and it was a simple case of land misappropriation? So what we are trying to say is that the judiciary ombudsman is not coming in to interfere in the independence of the judiciary, is to listen to wananchi. You as a wananchi can go the way you go to IPOA and make your complaint.
Thank you very much.
And then a report will be given to parliament.
Receive. They don't take.
Thank you for advancing this argument. Two things that you gentlemen said right now, and you, Fred, agree that there's already exists an ombudsman, isn't it?
Yes.
Was that the answer?
That is what they
Yes, it is there.
There's already an ombudsman.
So why?
What stops this particular ombudsman from doing these things that you people are proposing?
Now, where is the ombudsman domicile? I'm asking you that question.
At the judiciary.
Where? Which office?
The office of the Chief Justice.
Deputy Chief Justice.
Yes.
Deputy Chief Justice.
But that's the CJ's office. That's the CJ's office.
I want to
educate me.
No, I cannot educate you. I want to educate the public on this matter now, because now you are seated here and you are not able to educate them. The issue here is strengthening institutions. When you are strengthening an institution, you look at the gaps. The gaps, as Kinuthi has explained, in this context has been, there is a judge that the JSC members some of them are his colleagues or her colleagues. They cannot touch that.
Search
It is a hot
together in
wire.
And evidently,
Number
anyway,
two,
we've seen that. We've seen that.
Number two, the public don't know where to run to. Today, if there's a bad cop in Buruburu, the public will run to IPOA.
Straight away.
JSC discipline judges, but look, we need a point of reference where I am a public, I have a case in court, and it has taken so long, or I'm not happy about certain aspects. I go, they receive my complaint, and they file it, and then they can take it to the legislative. As a report also, it can be debated, and if amendment needed, can be done. Remember, even in the JSC that Judicial Ombudsman sits, he has or she has no vote. In fact, she does reports to these guys. Tell them, we have received this, here it is. You know,
thank you very much.
Strengthening institutions require more than activism.
Thank you very much.
It requires that
Fred,
look at the gaps.
Fred, have you finished? Fred, have you finished?
I wish you allowed me to finish, but you can proceed then.
I'd like to tell you two gentlemen sitting here that it is true that the judiciary needs an ombudsman. It is true that the judiciary needs to oversight itself, but the judiciary ought not to be oversighted in the manner that the BBI proposes in the ombudsman, because it talks about an ombudsman that's appointed by the president, of course approved by the Senate, but the strength that the strength and the power that that particular ombudsman is given with regard to initiating.
Would you like us to vote for him instead?
With regard, I'm just saying. I like the fact that you're advancing.
You can add an extra ballot.
You're saying that it is good to advance. It is good to have the judiciary oversighted. The proposal in which they propose in the BBI is going to be detrimental.
The reason he's appointed by the president is simply because he's the only Kenyan who got the highest number of votes. So he has the public.
It will amount to an interference with the judicial process, and I really think that
which process?
Which is crucial anyway, all the same.
Which process?
A simple question. Is there someone? No, wait. Is there someone you feel is better placed to appoint a judiciary ombudsman other than the president? The reasoning behind this constitutional principle.
Let me explain to you. The judiciary ought to govern itself interests. The things they're talking about, a judge going rogue, a judge not delivering judgment is a good time, are administrative internal things of the judiciary, which ought, if for example the judiciary is not delivering, that's why you have the check and the balance in the legislature, the check and the balance in the executive. You understand how the check and balance principle works is not by getting into the domain of another. That is what interdependence is about. That you two gentlemen are thinking that for me to oversight.
NATO has not told us.
It's like saying that the policeman should appoint.
NATO has not told us who should do the oversight. NATO has not told us how judiciary should be oversighted. He has not told us. He has done a lot of jargon around it and left it. But Kenyans are waiting because they expect NATO to understand and expect to
what triggered
what Nestor is not dealing with is a very simple thing.
Yes.
What we were coming from is a situation where we are telling the police, please choose one of you who will oversight you.
Yeah.
And you know what will happen.
Yeah.
That's why we had to have IPOA. And the reason why the chair of IPOA had to be appointed by the president is because this is the single person who has received the highest number of votes from Kenyans. So basically, he's acting on behalf of Kenyans and in the interest of Kenyans. Now, when you tell the judiciary to come and get, to appoint one of their own as an internal mechanism, who will check on their excesses. And these are people who are being bribed left, right, and center, and that's why cases are taking forever and you're getting some unsound judgments. What they will do, they will look for the most corrupt amongst them and he will become the person who oversight them. And that is why we have to have a separate office that is independent.
So I mean, Kinuthia and Fred think that to have independence of the judiciary, you need to get an extra arm, that of the executive, that looks and makes sure that they do their role.
Not the executive, but someone who has got the mandate of Kenyans to act on their behalf. But in this case, unfortunately, it is the president.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I
want to ask you a question, Linda.
Gentlemen,
what problem do you have with the current proposal of creation of the office of the ombudsman or strengthening it? What problem do you have with it?
Okay, a couple of
Would
things.
you mind if we appoint you ombudsman?
A couple of things. One, I'm just thinking that what we need to do in Kenya is to strengthen our institutions by ensuring that the check and balance system of the various arms of government happens. That is number one. And number two, that the proposal that the president appoints the ombudsman, which ombudsman initiates cases even with the disciplining of judges, in my understanding, would then be interfering with the free will and the judgment that is delivered by the various judges. Number three, I am thinking that there's already a system in which, for example, judges, me, you, Fred, and everyone else can go and raise petitions with regard to judges who we think are not performing or not doing good. There is already a mechanism within the judiciary, and that petition, once I petition, for example, the presidency, he forms a tribunal that investigates the conduct of judges, and that judge, for example, is then subjected to the judicial process and then is removed. That is what I'm thinking, that is what we need to strengthen, that is what we need to make function. Not in the manner of appointing a judicial, and an ombudsman, just wait, you ask me, and then not in the manner of appointing an ombudsman that investigates. What it's going to do is it's going to interfere with the free independence of the judgment of the judges.
And you know, the question then would be, why is it coming at this point in time?
He's telling us that there's a process that
yes,
is going on right now.
The constitutional process.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
And this is the problem we have with it. This is a process that comes after the fact. After so much injustice has been done to Kenyans, the president forms a commission. And you know how long these things take. Then they form a tribunal which investigates the judges and so on and so forth. So it's another long thing. What we are trying to do right now is to avert a situation that every other time the president will have to form a commission and then another commission. So what we need is to have a separate office.
Just wait.
Where you can walk tomorrow morning
you agreed now, as we speak right now, there's a system that
exists. There is a system that is not working.
That is number one. So what you need to do is to try to make sure the system works.
This is how it's happening.
But not by interfering. Not by interfering with the independence of that system.
There's something you've said. Neto has said you don't need a judiciary ombudsman that investigate. And I read Article 173, sub-Article 6, that says the judicial ombudsman shall not investigate. Just leave it at that point alone. You know, I like Neto's passion of, resisting the constitutional amendment.
Of confusing us.
I don't like the fact that he's not telling Kenyans what ought to be there. Because you see, when
Fred,
you have a car...
Fred, I've already said, in fact, and in fact, the argument that I led the two gentlemen of you is I asked, right now, as we speak, is there a problem? Is there a system in which judges are investigated? And if the answer is yes. If the answer is
it working? No.
Why
Can it be made better? Yes.
Why is it not working?
It has been done.
So let me explain to you. Fred, what then we should have been dealing with is the cause of that, why it is not working.
Which is what actually the reality, because in the event that this one sails through and there is no goodwill of making the same work, then it becomes almost...
Linda, this is where we are losing.
All right.
Yeah. The process is a judge
It is almost an automatic one?
A judge comes and does very atrocious things. Once they do atrocious things, before it gets to the president, it takes an amount of time because it will have to go to the JSC and then a tribunal will be appointed.
Yeah.
So this tribunal begins a process of now bringing people through the pain of saying what judges have put them through. And then those judges go into a process of investigation. It takes so long before that judge gets to there. But now, look at the process. It's simple. Instead of waiting for a judge to do atrocious things and then you come and create a tribunal to investigate them, what you do is you set up an office where every Kenyan who feels aggrieved goes and says, Mimi, naona hivi. This is what I feel. In this case, it's not going well. What does the office do? They make a report. What do they do with the report? They present to the JSC and they present to Parliament. Now, Parliament is mandated by Kenyans to oversight. And what does Parliament do?
I'm just asking, I'm requesting you gentlemen to please go and read the provisions of the Judiciary Ombudsman. That is one. Two, look at best practices elsewhere, where, for example, the institution of the Judiciary Ombudsman works. There's best practices. And that is why, as lawyers, and I was hoping that lawyers always work on the basis of good practices and precedents. So do not just think that because it looks like it's going to be working, let us not create a mongrel or a monster because we think there are a few things that we need to fix. Let us, law, like I told you, is a science. There's formula to doing it. Yes, an ombudsman is necessary, an ombudsman is important. How does the ombudsman work without interfering with the independence of the judiciary? That is what we need to do. And if BBI proposed that one, we'd have been saying, hallelujah, this is a good solution. But it is not, Fred. And so let us not, because we want to
Linda,
support...
I know you want us to proceed.
Yes.
But allow me to say this lastly from my end.
Yes, proceed.
The interpretation
of every aspect of law is different. That's why today somebody will kill and he gets a defense lawyer, and the other, it's very different. But Kenyans will have an opportunity in this process to do the last public participation of approving or rejecting. But before they do that, our role as citizens who love this country is to tell them the context they are in. And that's what we are saying. In this document, the Judiciary Ombudsman shall not investigate or reopen any cases or pending or anything continuing. Their job, as Kinuthia has aptly put it, is to receive complaints from the public. They're the link between the public and the judiciary. And because the judges cannot do that and investigate on their own effectively, then there's an office that has been set to receive those complaints. And that office shall send this report to both the JSC and the Parliament. And Kinuthia again has aptly put it. What is the role of Parliament in this? To debate this and discuss. And if there's any amendment that should be done into the acts that govern that, it can be done. If there's any decision to be made, it will be made through Parliament. Who is Parliament? The representative of the people. So that's why it is happening that way. But I agree with, I respect Neto's argument. I really respect it. But let's do this. Give it to the people.
And when you give it to the people as United Agreement Party, we're asking the people should reject it because it's not good for them. And we are happy, for example, we're happy to be defeated at the ballot as United Agreement Party, but at least we'll have told the Kenyans that this is not good for them. So when it bites them, we'll tell them that we said yes, an ombudsman is important, but not in the manner that BBI proposes.
This is just one aspect that
I get the feeling that Neto has a problem with the word BBI, but it doesn't have a problem with the word constitutional amendment.
And you see, Linda, thanks Fred for giving me that particular thing. I have no problem with any constitutional amendment whatsoever. And that is actually my other problem now with the BBI constitutional amendment. Wait first before you go to Ruto. I don't know why Ruto has you have appetite for Ruto. But let me ask you, these two lawyers here should tell you that any law that you make needs to be responding to a particular conflict. It needs to respond to a certain problem that we foresaw. BBI came together because Kenya has always post-election violence issues that we always fight after elections.
And in fact, somebody asked that question.
I'd like to ask these two gentlemen. Show me, like a little boy, like a kindergarten child, how do these proposals of Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta sort out post-election violence?
And malpractices. It's a question that someone has asked.
If you showed me that, I will then be very happy and tell you that maybe we need to consider. But if you did not show me how it sorts out our youth unemployment issues, which is a grave problem, and that is part of the reasons why, if you read the Kriegler report, it will tell you Kenya is sitting on a ticking time bomb because of our youth unemployment. Show me how BBI is going to sort out youth unemployment. That is number one. Show me how BBI is going to sort out Kenya's inclusion, not of Raila Odinga and William Ruto sitting on the table to share the national cake. How the Kikuyu, the Luo, the Giriama is going to be sitting down in an inclusive manner. Show me how that BBI sorts out those particular problems of the country, of the economy. I'll be a very happy man. I'm now listening.
Start from inclusivity, because that is the most important thing. Inclusivity in its raw form and meaning, it means that when all Kenyans or every Kenyan in the Republic can access the basic rights, can access the basic needs, can access the provisions of economic and social rights in Article 43, that is it. That is inclusivity. The other aspect of inclusivity is when every Kenyan has got an opportunity to share into the equitable economic opportunities that we have. And that has been defined in proposed amendment in Article 11. The other aspect of inclusivity is every Kenyan can now live in a country where they have got responsibility as citizens, so that everyone knows that this is what is expected of me. Return my taxes, declare my income, protect my family, provide for them, respect the elderly. That is inclusivity, because it binds everyone must do that. However, the opponents of constitutional amendment today are trying to look at the political inclusivity that has been brought through the amendment in the executive. That is a very narrow way of looking at it, because we are talking about an increment of over 194 billion that is now going to the counties. And we're not ending there. We are saying this money, it has been ending at the county headquarters. We have seen when you walk into a county headquarters, very clean, very nice. Go to the next village 100 kilometers away. Nothing. So we are saying, how do we now start measuring development from the villages? Do we have a way of ensuring that
every village in this country, in the name of a ward, can now share into the development requirements. Yes, we are saying at least 5%. At least means it can be 15%, 20%. So in this, what is this money going to do? It shall be purely for developmental expenditure. That means you look at the area. Why are women still giving birth in the villages? Okay. Because the next health service center is 500 kilometers away. Bring it closer to them. Okay. The next school is 200 kilometers away. Bring it closer to them. The road is bad. The security is bad. That is what we are talking about. So in my view, and in my personal opinion, the economic inclusivity is to a greater extent in the constitutional amendment than political inclusivity. But
and you have no fears that there's going to be a problem in implementing the same?
There is no problem. Which problem? We are a very rich country. We are stealing our own money. We are very rich. Look at the budget.
Corruption is going to be dealt with before we get to this.
That is why we are saying, if we are going to have this money to the ward level, let's cure corruption. And there is a proposal to cure corruption there.
That is going to work.
What I know, in every contest like constitutional amendment, there must be opposers and proposers. And I'm happy Neto has joined the team of opposers. Let's meet at the ballot.
Thank you very much, Fred. And one of the things that I like is I wanted to, first of all, to unpack for Kenyans what inclusivity is about. And one of
I've
the
defined it aptly.
One of the things, aptly is debatable. But you've spoken to the principles of the realization of Article 43 of the Constitution, which is economic, social, cultural rights. Now, I would like to explain to you, why don't we realize economic, social, cultural rights under the Constitution? Number one, it's something called inept leadership. Number two, it's corruption. Number three is a debate and conversation of those rights. A lack of creation of awareness on those particular rights. Number four is public participation. Now, having highlighted for you those four things, now let me help you walk backwards. Right now, the Constitution already put principles of public participation in place, the principles under Article 10. Nothing stops Kenyans, for example. Right now, you have the
do we have a Public Participation Act? Let me just ask you.
It's not there.
No.
In the national values, it is a list.
Okay.
Today, under the legislative proposals, it is there. And therefore, I'm just trying to stop Neto there so that he rethinks what he's saying.
No, I'm not rethinking. I'm just asking. I mean, I'm happy that you're giving me fodder for my argument. Article 10 of the Constitution already talks about public participation, so that development ought to be top and bottoms up, that people are supposed to be giving their aspirations in the CIDP documents of the county government. And that particular is already anticipated in Article 10. What is stopping us from enacting that right now without the BBI amendments? Nothing. Number two, Fred, and that's why I'm asking you, you people are talking about a lot more money going to go to the county, 35%, which is a lot of money.
At least
35%. The Constitution right now talks at Article 203, at least 15%. What has stopped Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga from giving us at least 15%? The at least 15% is non-existent right now. How much more are we going to have this 35%, which does not even exist right now? Number three, I was just telling you that, the things that stop us from realizing economic cultural rights are things that are of own creation. The reason why we do not have a lot more money going to the counties is because of the public debt. What have you people proposed in BBI to deal with the public debt? Okay. These gluttonians, the greed and the appetite for public debt, because public debt stops us from having a lot more money going to the counties. This is what we should be dealing with in terms of how do you use the
Why do we borrow?
We borrow because of
Ben, I don't know why you're being
bad
we borrow because we steal. So the first thing we must do, deal with theft. How are we dealing with theft?
And Fred, thank you very much. Can you just before you come in, Fred, you have these persons of brilliance once or twice, and then you take a trajectory that I don't know where it goes.
Because I don't confirm your argument.
No. You're talking about theft, you're talking about corruption, you're talking about lack of delivery of services. Those are not constitutional issues. Yeah. Those are principles of constitutionalism. That is what the law expects us to do right now. No amount of legislation, no amount of constitutional amendment is going to help us do the bad behavior of corruption. No amount of legislation is going to help us from stopping us from our greed. Look at what we're just doing. You cannot legislate on morals. Look at what we're dealing with right now. You have KEPSA that has brought in PPE funds, 7.6 billion. Kenyans are dying for lack of PPEs. Doctors are not. You do not need legislation. There's already 7.6 billion worth of captured things, and they've been separated because of a small, narrow elite that is state capture. You've captured the executive, you've captured the legislature, now you want to capture the judiciary in the name of the ombudsman. We must say no to you.
Let me explain to you something.
It's not
very
us,
simple.
listen, it's Kenya.
It is you people and your BBI.
You started by asking a very simple question. How does BBI, for example, sort out issues like youth unemployment?
Yes.
And I can tell you, in Kenya, we don't even need youth employment. All we need is a ban on importation of rubbish. We are a country that is importing toothpicks.
And why are we banning? And why are we importing the rubbish? It's because of extractive institutions. You know, because
it's not because of institutions.
Extractive institutions.
Let me tell you,
Let me explain to you. It's because of the monopoly of a narrow elite who are in state capture, and this is the reason why they're bringing for us BBI, so that we are forever captive. But please proceed.
This is what we need to understand as a nation. That before even the state bans, if we agreed that as a nation, we are going to boycott imported underwear, we are going to boycott imported toothpicks, we are going to boycott imported, because it creates, and I'm telling you, it takes one rich fool to import 10 million toothpicks. But that would need 2,000-3,000 young people to make if we decided to make them here. In Standard 7, I keep saying I made a mwiko, art and craft. And today we are importing a mwiko from China, given that every house in this country wanakula ugali. I'm telling you, by just banning the importation of rubbish, just banning the importation of a mwiko, for example, the number of jobs would create in this country is unbelievable.
Just
and that is what I'm coming to. So BBI, which is what I'm trying to say, is a document that has been brought by a political elite to sort out problems of their own. The problem is that us as Wananchi have not come up with one of our own to tell them that these are the things that we need sorted and this is how we need them sorted. If we come out and they say BBI, we say unemployment. If they come up and they say BBI, we tell them imported toothpicks. If they come and they say BBI and we tell them unga should be 50 shillings. If they come and they say BBI and we tell them there is not enough hospitals. If they come and they say BBI and we tell them that the poor do not even have toilets, they do not have water, then we are going to be listened to.
Is
the problem is when they come with a BBI form and they tell us we are signing here, we ask, tunaandika mpaka date, and we sign.
Kinuthia, I like you already.
But if
Kinuthia, I like you already. Just
if
wait.
we
Kinuthia,
come up with our own conversation as Wananchi,
Kinuthia, I like you already.
We
just
are not pushing our own agenda. The BBI agenda, remember, this country was silent. Until the elite came up with their document called BBI. And we are trying to fit in there. As citizens, we have never come out strongly with our agenda and placed it on the table and saying tunakufa na hii.
Kinuthia, just give me a chance. Me, I like you already. And you know, I need an ought apologize to Kenyans on behalf of the United Green Party that we have actually taken them on a journey that is not ours. This conversation of BBI is not a conversation we should not be having on national TV because it has nothing to do with the interest of the Mwananchi. That's a very good thing, I agree with you. In fact, we should not even have spent 1.5 hours here. We should be talking about proposals of how to deal with youth unemployment. We should be talking about proposals of how to protect the environment. We should have been talking about proposals to do social justice and equality. That for me is a debate I'm happy to have. And I'm sorry, we apologize to Kenyans. BBI should not have taken our time, and please reject it first, and then let's proceed.
Let's write down. Fred, reality is that yes, we're grappling with all these things that they have mentioned.
Absolutely.
And I mean, face it or not, it is one of the biggest things that will be an undoing for the BBI conversation today. The big government has swallowed the small government that is supposed to speak and raise these issues, has equally swallowed the people. What way forward?
Linda, it is true that Kenyans today are suffering. It is true that children have stayed home for over 10 months. It is true that businesses have applied for insolvency. It is true that this country has had challenges in terms of providing for the people. It is true that the Jubilee government has had numerous challenges in terms of delivering their manifesto and their Big Four agenda. It is true. However, look at where we are. We cannot complain every time and do nothing. We must do something. The starting point is to fix the immediate problems. We fix the issues of hunger. We fix the issues of
immediate
COVID-19.
Problem is Uber revolution.
Issues of unemployment. However, because this country will be there after us, it will be there, it was there before us. We must also look at the long-term solutions. The long-term solutions require and demands of us as citizens who love this country to look at the supreme law and look at the gaps. The gaps have been identified. If you read the Auditor General report, it identifies so many areas where we have failed in terms of public management of public funds. It has identified that. We must fix that. Number two, if you look at the little, that the at least 15%, because when the constitution say at least 15%, people think that it's just 15 that has been sent. I was very happy to read from one of the economists of this country, and he outlined a report that at least 15% it has at some point has gone up to 31. If indeed, let's peg it at an average 31, that is what 31 has done. If you peg it on at least 35, then it will be now an average probably of 40. What will that do? That is what we are talking about. And as Kenyans who love this country, I want to ask Kenyans, don't listen to a politician who is telling you to reject a document that you have not read. But listen to a politician who's telling you, read, then make an independent decision. Because politicians have got personal interest. And I can also tell you, some of the people that are saying today that we don't want constitutional amendment, let us implement, they're the same people who said no to the 2010 constitution.
Okay.
Therefore, it is important for Kenyans to understand. Lastly, this constitutional amendment has got objects. In its objects, one of them is implementation challenges that we have witnessed in the 2010. And therefore, the amendment also comes with the implementation of the areas that we are not able to implement as it is today.
Okay. We wind it at that. Thank you so much for running the show, gentlemen. If you had allowed me to run the show, we would not have spoken about BBI for one.
But I really think that I think
make it brief.
Thank you, Linda, for always giving us an opportunity as the United Government Party. But I think Kenyans need to wake up and start valuing their democracy. We need to put more interest in the democratic capital, and so that at least we safeguard it. Because if you do not safeguard our democracy, and I agree with Honorable Kinu, they are sitting next to me, we need to start a conversation that is about the Kenyan people, which is not about these elites or on BBI. We need to talk about the Kenyans' interest of the economy, money in their pockets, youth and employment issues, and things that really matter to the Kenyans. And I think as United Government Party, that should be our space, and we shall lead that particular front in moving Kenyans towards what makes sense to them to protect their democracy.
Indeed.
Quick one, what's the immediate needs of Kenyans? Unga. 12 billion slated for BBI. If you divide by 120 shillings a packet of unga, you'd have 100 million packets of unga.
Give it to the people,
give it to the
reject BBI.
No, don't reject BBI. But basically what I'm trying to say, that this 12 billion is like 100 million packets of unga.
What about the long term that Fred speaks about,
what
the
I'm
problems
trying
that
to
bedevil
say
us?
is that the long term is that when people are full,
We
when people are not
that.
hungry, and when people are able to feed their families and give them food, shelter, and clothing, sometimes they even forget about politics. The reason that some of the people in the US are apolitical completely is because they're able to meet their own needs.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That's the last speaker is Ben Kinuthia. He's a lawyer and political analyst. Good to have you this morning. Yes, on my father's left, Fred Ukangu, Secretary General, Third Way Alliance, and lastly, Neto Agostino, who's the United Green Movement co-party leader. Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's where we get to wind up this conversation, and we cross over to a different one altogether. We're headed to the festive season. It is important that we plan financially. That's what we discuss.